Those who aren't familiar with your work, I don't know that everybody realizes how prolific your writing has been, and also the scale development for your Aspire scale. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be?
The Aspires? Yes. Well, again, my whole issue was to find an empirically rigorous approach to examining the value of spirituality, and to either determine it had something to contribute or not. And I remember when I first started here at Loyola, being on some dissertations, doctoral students would come, I'm going to look at the value of, the spiritual well-being scale and X. Or I'm going to look at the value of this, this intrinsic, extrinsic religiosity and Y. And my training is personality psychology and the big 5 personality dimensions. So I would always say, okay, well, I've got these 5 factors. Now you're going to show me what value your construct has over what these 5 dimensions do. And for the first several dissertations, there was no incremental validity for any of the scales that we looked at. It just wasn't there. Now, on one hand, I felt vindicated about my training in the Big 5, and that, yes, indeed, the Big 5 is, is certainly an empirically robust model. We're talking about the end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s, and even though the Big 5 is very well entrenched now, back then it wasn't. A lot of critics, a lot of people saying that the Big 5 really wasn't important. And during my postdoc with Costa McRae, I spent a lot of my time taking on some of the criticisms that came, that people would say, there's really 6 factors or 7 factors. And we would collect data and do analyses to examine these new scales, these new constructs, and to really put them through the grinder, the empirical grinder, to see whether indeed we find them as, and never once did we find anything that was more than just the Big 5. And again, over the years since then, when I left, more of that data has accrued, and the Big 5 is certainly an area of prominence today. But the bottom line is that I learned a lot of the techniques, the models, methods, and measures needed for testing whether something was new or was just part of the Big 5. So when I came to Loyola, I just applied that here. I say, okay, is this new or is it just redundant with the Big 5? And repeatedly we found that it was redundant with the Big 5. And that was a little bit of ambivalence here. On the one hand, I was feeling good about the Big 5, that yes, indeed, we're onto something here. It's a model that needs support. On the other hand, I was starting to feel like the devil there in the department, in that I'm single-handedly blowing away the value of religious and spiritual constructs. But, the argument was, if they don't have anything, they don't have anything. So it wasn't, for a while, I thought I was going to lose my job, too, because I'm really not moving the boat forward kind of thing. Then we came across this one scale, the faith maturity scale, that we used in a study, and yes, indeed, it showed that it had incremental validity over the Big 5. Substantive, a lot of validity. Wow. That's what started me thinking that, wow, maybe there is something here that could be useful. Now, the faith maturity scale has a couple of limitations to it, such as it's a mainline Protestant instrument. So if you're a Christian and you're committed to Jesus Christ, the scale seems to be appropriate for you. But if you're Jewish, Hindu, Catholic, we'll get to the Catholic thing, but if you're a non-Christian, this scale is not appropriate. So this raised the issue of, can we capture something more unique and more generalizable about spirituality that would be appropriate for all people of faith, and maybe even people without faith? It's like, is there something here that we can work on and really get at this unique quality of spirituality in a way that made sense empirically, that was plugged into scientific psychology, i.e. the Big 5, that would be a universal aspect of human functioning. So that's where we started off on the Aspires quest, as we call it. What we did was to try and figure out, well, okay, what is it that all religions have in common? And I got some money from Loyola, and I put together a seminar where I invited religious scholars from different faith orientations to come. We had who did we have? We had a Baptist, a Lutheran, we had a Jesuit representing the Catholic tradition, we had a Quaker, we had a Buddhist, we had a Hindu, Swami, come in, We had a Jewish rabbi. We didn't have a Muslim. It was the one group that was not present at this one meeting. But we spent the day with these group of religious scholars talking about their faith traditions, what their faith traditions are trying to accomplish in people. And then we took the discussion to come up with, at the end, what is it that all of your groups have in common? What is it that all religious faiths are really trying to do with people or call from people? What's the growth they're trying to bring about? What is it that you're all doing in common? And I had these people come and outline the different things that seem to be common about all of these different groups. What was the common spirituality? For example, things like thinking, both and thinking. That people who are spiritual don't look at life as either or, it's both and. People who are spiritual have a tolerance for contradictions that non-spiritual people don't have. The concept of transcendence was there. There's some transcendent perspective that took on a couple of different tones, like connection to God, sense of universality with everybody, a meshment in this community of believers, the communion of saints as the Catholic Church. So we had a number of different qualities that they came up with that they all agreed were relevant and appropriate for all of these faith groups. And I had them write items for each of these qualities. So at the end of the day, what I had from them was some ideas about what it is that everyone has in common, all faith groups have in common, a set of items designed to measure those qualities, and I was good to go on developing a scale. So I took some items of my own as well and put it all together. And then what we did is we enacted an empirical strategy for developing this scale. Okay, that if I wanted to have a measure of spirituality that I thought was going to be good, okay, that's going to add to the scientific body of knowledge, it's going to have some value for promoting and extending our understanding of human beings, then there's certain things that I would need to have from this scale. Number one, it has to be independent of the Big Five. Because if it's some combination of the Big Five, it's redundant, and science does not like redundancy.
Yeah, I would think something like the both and thinking might be more openness than...
Well, that's what we're going to look and see.
Yeah.
So it had to be independent of Big Five. It had to be of a comparable level of generalizability as the Big Five. In other words, spirituality to be important had to have some breadth and meat to it. Just going to be one thing. It had to be several kinds of qualities there. It also had to be recoverable across different sources of data. And spirituality a lot of times is seen as being not unique, individualistic. Everybody's got different spiritualities. Everybody sees it differently. But that couldn't be. That spirituality has to be spirituality for everybody.
So